Marcus Thompson had everything money could buy, but the one thing he desperately wanted seemed impossible to purchase. As he sat in his sleek Manhattan office overlooking Central Park, the 52-year-old tech entrepreneur stared at a framed photo on his mahogany desk. The image showed him with his late wife Sarah and their daughter Emma, taken just 3 years ago during what would be their last family vacation together. Sarah's battle with cancer had ended 2 years ago, leaving Marcus to raise their now 16-year-old daughter alone. The problem was, Marcus didn't know how to be alone with his grief, let alone help Emma navigate hers. Work had become his escape, his 12-hour days stretching into 14, then 16 hours. He told himself he was building a legacy for Emma, but deep down he knew the truth. He was running from the overwhelming silence that filled their 5-bedroom penthouse on the Upper East Side. Emma had grown distant and quiet, spending most of her time locked in her room. Their conversations had dwindled to polite exchanges about homework and schedules. Marcus had tried therapy for both of them, family counselors, even expensive retreats, but nothing seemed to bridge the growing chasm between father and daughter. The guilt ate at him daily. Sarah would have known what to do. Sarah always knew what to do. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Marcus kissed Emma goodbye as she headed to her private school, though she barely looked up from her phone. He grabbed his coffee and headed to Thompson Technologies, where he spent the morning in back-to-back meetings about their latest artificial intelligence project. But around noon, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in months. A sudden, overwhelming urge to go home. Maybe it was exhaustion, or perhaps something deeper calling him back to the life he'd been avoiding. He canceled his afternoon appointments, something that shocked his assistant Rebecca, who couldn't remember the last time Marcus had left the office before 7 p.m. The drive home through Manhattan traffic gave him time to think about Emma, about how much he missed really talking to her, about how Sarah used to make their home feel warm and alive with laughter and music. Marcus rode the elevator to the 20th floor, his key turning quietly in the lock of their penthouse. The moment he stepped inside, he heard something that stopped him in his tracks. Piano music was drifting from the living room, but not just any music. Someone was playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, Sarah's favorite piece. She used to play it every evening after dinner, and the familiar melody hit Marcus like a physical blow to his chest. He set down his briefcase and moved carefully toward the sound, his heart racing with confusion and something that felt dangerously like hope. As he rounded the corner into their spacious living room, what he saw made him grip the doorframe for support. Emma sat at their baby grand piano, the one that had been silent since Sarah's death, her fingers moving gracefully across the keys. But she wasn't alone. Rosa Martinez, their housekeeper who had worked for the family for 8 years, sat beside Emma on the piano bench, gently guiding her hands and softly humming along to the melody. Marcus had barely noticed Rosa over the past 2 years, beyond signing her paychecks and nodding politely when she cleaned around him during his rare moments at home. She was in her early 50s, a quiet woman from El Salvador who had raised 4 children of her own while working multiple jobs to support them. He had hired her initially because of her excellent references, but Sarah had grown genuinely fond of Rosa, often sitting in the kitchen chatting with her in broken Spanish about recipes and family. Now Marcus watched in amazement as Rosa patiently corrected Emma's fingering, her weathered hands gentle and encouraging. Emma was crying softly, but she continued playing, and Marcus realized these weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of release, of finally finding a way to connect with her mother's memory. When the piece ended, Rosa pulled Emma into a warm embrace, stroking her hair and whispering something in Spanish that sounded like a prayer or a blessing. Emma melted into the older woman's arms, and Marcus saw his daughter truly smile for the first time in 2 years. That's when Rosa noticed Marcus standing in the doorway, and her face immediately filled with panic. She stood up quickly, smoothing her uniform and speaking in rapid, apologetic English about how she was sorry for overstepping, how she knew she should have asked permission, how she would understand if he wanted to let her go. But Marcus couldn't speak. He was watching Emma, who had also noticed him but didn't look embarrassed or caught. Instead, she looked hopeful, almost proud. She walked over to her father, and for the first time since the funeral, she hugged him without being asked. Through her embrace, Emma whispered that Rosa had been teaching her piano for the past 6 months, ever since Emma had mentioned missing her mother's music. Rosa had stayed after work 3 days a week, refusing any extra payment, simply because she understood what it meant to lose someone precious, and she recognized that Emma needed a way to honor her mother's memory. Marcus looked at Rosa, who was still standing by the piano looking terrified that she had crossed a line. Instead of anger, Marcus felt something breaking open in his chest. This woman, who earned a modest salary cleaning their home, had been giving his daughter something he hadn't even realized she needed. Not just piano lessons, but patient attention, gentle guidance, and most importantly, a connection to the love and warmth that had left their home when Sarah died. Over the following weeks, Marcus began coming home earlier. He started really seeing Rosa, not just as an employee but as the remarkable woman who had been quietly holding his family together while he buried himself in work. He learned that she sent most of her earnings to her elderly parents in El Salvador and that she had been saving for years to bring her youngest son to America for college. Marcus also discovered that Rosa had been doing far more than cleaning. She had been leaving Emma's favorite snacks where she would find them, remembering important school events that Marcus had forgotten, and even helping Emma with Spanish homework. She had been the steady, nurturing presence that both father and daughter desperately needed but were too lost in grief to recognize. The transformation in their home was gradual but profound. Emma began joining Marcus and Rosa in the kitchen for dinner, where Rosa taught them both to cook Sarah's favorite recipes. The piano became the heart of their home again, with Emma playing every evening while Marcus listened from his chair and Rosa hummed along while preparing tomorrow's meals. 3 months later, Marcus made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He called Rosa into his study and offered her something beyond a raise or bonus. He wanted to pay for her son Miguel's entire college education and help bring him to New York. But more than that, he asked Rosa if she would consider becoming less of an employee and more of a family member, someone who would help him navigate the challenge of raising Emma through her final years of high school. Rosa cried as she accepted, not because of the money, though that was life-changing, but because she had grown to love Emma like her own daughter and had been heartbroken at the thought of watching this family remain fractured by grief. Emma's transformation was the most remarkable of all. She began playing piano at school events, joined the chess club that Rosa suggested, and even started talking about her mother with fondness rather than just sadness. She still missed Sarah terribly, but Rosa had shown her that love doesn't end with death. It transforms and continues through the kindness of others who choose to care. Marcus realized that in trying to provide everything for Emma through his wealth and success, he had nearly missed the most important thing she needed, a sense of family, of being truly seen and cared for. Rosa had given them both a gift that couldn't be bought, the patience to heal and the wisdom to find joy again. That Christmas, their penthouse was filled with music and laughter for the first time in years. Rosa's son Miguel had arrived from El Salvador and was preparing to start at Columbia University in the fall. Emma played Christmas carols on the piano while Rosa taught everyone how to make traditional Salvadoran tamales, and Marcus found himself thinking that Sarah would be proud of the family they were becoming. The true magic of kindness lies not in grand gestures or expensive gifts, but in the quiet moments when one person chooses to see another's pain and respond with love. Rosa could have simply done her job, collected her paycheck, and gone home to her own life and challenges. Instead, she chose to open her heart to a grieving girl and her overwhelmed father, creating a bridge back to hope and healing. Sometimes the angels in our lives don't have wings. Sometimes they have work uniforms and calloused hands and hearts big enough to hold our broken pieces until we're strong enough to put them back together. Sometimes they show up not when we're looking for them, but exactly when we need them most. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the incredible power of everyday kindness, please hit that like button and subscribe to Pure Kindness Stories for more inspiring tales that celebrate the beautiful humanity we all share. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that even in our darkest moments, there are people willing to light candles in our darkness. Because sometimes, the smallest acts of love create the biggest miracles.